Welcome to Tally Help videos. In this video, we will look at the scenarios where GST is not calculated automatically in an invoice. We will also learn the steps to identify the reason for this failure and set it right. TallyPrime is designed to calculate and apply GST amount in an invoice based on the tax rate and tax details set by you in the masters. When there is a conflict in the tax details between any two masters in a transaction, or when there are no tax details set, TallyPrime does not calculate GST. TallyPrime checks various masters in an order for GST details to calculate tax in the invoice. When more than one master has the GST information, TallyPrime uses a hierarchy of priority to apply tax. The highest priority is given to the details entered directly in the transaction, then to details set in ledger, and least to the ones in company F11. In order to avoid conflict in tax details or missing tax details, it is recommended to configure GST rates in stock item master if you are into trading or manufacturing, and in ledger master in case you are into services and do not use inventory. Let us look at a few scenarios where TallyPrime does not calculate GST. We will also look at the flexibility it offers to identify and rectify such issues in the same transaction. Later, we will learn to permanently resolve such issues. Scenario 1. The first case in which TallyPrime does not calculate GST in a transaction is when complete tax details that you need to calculate GST are not set in the masters selected in the transaction. Let us record a transaction. Select the party and accept the information in the party details. The party selected is from the same state as your company. Select the sales ledger. Select the items sold. Since the party is local, select CGST and SGST ledgers. As you can see, TallyPrime does not apply GST. You want to complete the transaction and hence want to know the reason for not applying GST in the transaction. Unknown to you, none of the masters selected in the transaction have GST rate or tax type configured. A unique report is designed and provided to you in TallyPrime to help in such cases. This report helps you learn the amount of GST applicable in the transaction, allows you to check if there is any difference in GST applicable and GST applied in the transaction, and lets you know the reason when GST is not applied in the invoice. Let us open the GST Tax Analysis Report. Press Alt-A or click Related Reports and select GST Tax Analysis. This means TallyPrime is not calculating GST for this transaction as there is no tax implication due to the missing tax rate and tax type information. Since you now know the reason, you can make the required changes. Open the ledger or stock item master as per your requirement and configure tax details. Once you configure the details, TallyPrime calculates GST in the transaction. Scenario 2. The next instance where GST calculation fails is when you select IGST in place of CGST and SGST or the vice versa. This happens when you are not aware of the nature of transaction set in the sales ledger. This is a sales ledger where interstate sales taxable is selected as the default nature. Let us see how this mistake may occur while recording transactions. In the sales invoice, select the party. Select the sales ledger that we just saw, in which interstate sales taxable is set as the nature. The tax rate and nature set in sales ledger get the highest priority while applying tax in the invoice. Select the items. You will now select CGST and SGST ledgers as majority of transactions are local sales, and since you are not aware of the nature set in the sales ledger. Go to GST Tax Analysis to get the reason for not applying GST in the invoice. press Alt-A or click Related Reports and select GST Tax Analysis. Here, you can see that TallyPrime is calculating tax for interstate sales, but it is not applied in the voucher as IGST tax ledger is not selected in the voucher. TallyPrime is calculating the tax but is not applying in the transaction, due to which the As Per Transaction field is empty. You will also see the note informing you about the mismatch in nature and place of supply. In order to calculate tax, you have to select a sales ledger configured for local sales taxable as the party is from the same state. As you can see here, CGST and SGST values appear. You can open GST tax analysis again to see the calculated and applied values. Scenario 3. The next scenario where TallyPrime does not calculate GST is when the place of supply is changed in the supplementary details while recording the transaction. Let us see how this mistake can happen. In the sales invoice, select the party. In the party details screen, change the place of supply. Due to the change in place of supply, the party is now considered as an interstate party. Now you select a sales ledger that is applicable for local taxable sales. You are not aware of the tax setting in the sales ledger to local tax. Select the item or items. Now you go on to select IGST as the tax ledger since you have changed the place of supply from local to interstate. The tax amount does not appear. Go to GST tax analysis to get the reason for not applying GST in the invoice. Press Alt-A or click Related Reports and select GST tax analysis. Here you can see that TallyPrime is considering this as a local sales transaction as the nature of transaction configured in the sales ledger is sales taxable. Therefore, tax is not applied in the transaction as the place of supply of the party was changed from local to interstate. You will see that TallyPrime is calculating the tax but it is not applying in the transaction, due to which the As Per Transaction field is empty. Most importantly, TallyPrime lets you know the reason for not applying tax in the transaction in the form of a note. In this case, there is a mismatch in nature of transaction and place of supply. Depending on the type of transaction you want to record, there are two ways you can resolve this issue. You can change the place of supply of the party back to original in case it was altered by mistake. Now, you can select CGST and SGST and you will find that TallyPrime applies the tax. Or if the place of supply was altered intentionally, then you can change the sales ledger and select a one configured with interstate sales taxable. Then you can select IGST tax ledger and TallyPrime calculates tax. Scenario 4. The next scenario in which GST calculation fails is when you override the nature during voucher entry. As you know, you can configure a specific nature of transaction for a sales ledger to use only in particular type of sales, for example, sales taxable for local taxable sales and interstate sales taxable for taxable sales made to parties in other states. You can also opt not to configure any nature in order to use the same sales ledger in all types of sales transactions. In case you have configured nature of transaction in sales ledger and want to change the nature in one of the transaction, TallyPrime allows the same. However, due to the change in the nature, the GST is not calculated if the tax ledger is not changed to suit change in nature. For example, if you change the nature from local to interstate, then you have to select IGST ledger instead of CGST and SGST and vice versa for TallyPrime to calculate tax. Let us see how this mistake can occur. In the sales invoice, press F12 and set the option Modify Tax Rate Details of GST to Yes. This will allow you to change the tax rate and nature that are set in the sales ledger while doing voucher entry. Press Ctrl A to accept the change. Select the party. Select Sales Ledger where you set the nature of local sales. In the GST classification detail screen, change the nature for transaction from sales taxable to interstate sales taxable. Now, due to force of habit or by mistake, you select CGST and SGST. TallyPrime does not calculate the tax. You can check the GST tax analysis. Here, you will find that TallyPrime is calculating tax for interstate sales nature. Therefore, tax is not applying CGST and SGST in the transaction. You will also see the note that gives you the specific reason for not applying GST in the voucher. Here again, you can do two things. Select IGST tax ledger in place of CGST and SGST. Or, if the change was by mistake, you can go back and revert the change in nature and retain local sales taxable. When you set the option SSE of other territory to yes in F11 company GST details, all transactions by default are considered as interstate. And IGST is applicable in all taxable transactions. However, if you select CGST and SGST tax ledgers during a transaction in such a company, TallyPrime does not apply tax. And when you go to GST tax analysis, you will find that tax is calculated on interstate sales. Since you have selected CGST and SGST ledger in the voucher, tax is not applied. To resolve this, just remove the CGST and SGST ledgers and select IGST ledger. TallyPrime applies IGST and shows in the transaction. Scenario 5. Yet another case where GST is not applied in the voucher is when non-GST supply is selected. Here is a sales ledger where is non-GST goods is set to yes. This option appears only when set type of goods is enabled in the F12 of GST detail screen. This means GST is not applicable for the transaction where this sales ledger is selected. You can set this in stock item master as well, in which case only the particular item is not included for GST calculation. Now you can select either such sales ledger or stock item in a voucher and then try to apply GST by selecting tax ledgers. TallyPrime does not apply tax. You can open the GST tax analysis screen. You will see that tax is not calculated for the items. You can remove the tax ledgers from voucher as this is a non-GST sale, or if it is taxable, configure tax details in the item master with due date to get auto calculation. While these are some of the most commonly made mistakes while applying GST in a transaction and their solution, you can avoid these mistakes by configuring GST details in master based or your business operations. TallyPrime is very flexible and allows you to configure GST details at the company level, ledger level, stock item level, and even enter directly in voucher. You can set up GST details at company level in case the company deals in items that have the same HSN code and GST rate. This way, you can set up the details at a single location and TallyPrime applies same details in every transaction. There is no need to set up these details in any other master. Of course, we'll have to record other GST related details like party GST IN and so on, but not the details related to the merchandise traded. You can set up GST details at stock group level in case the business handles merchandise which fall under a few different HSN codes and GST rates. You can create a separate stock item for which of these groups and set the GST details in the stock group master. When you select an item in the voucher, TallyPrime applies the tax details set in the respective stock group. In case the tax details are configured at both company level and stock group level, the details in stock group are given priority while applying tax in vouchers. Similarly, configure GST details in stock items if you are dealing with merchandise where each one has different HSN code and tax rate. This helps you ensure that correct tax details are applied for each item. In all these three cases, you have to avoid setting tax details in accounting ledgers. In case tax details are set in accounting ledgers such as your sales ledger or purchase ledger, the same is given priority over the details set at company level, group level and stock item level. In case you set GST details in sales ledger, then the set details are applied to all items selected in a voucher. This is despite tax details being set in the item master. In a sales ledger, you can select the nature of transaction also. When nature of transaction is set in accounting ledger, such as sales or purchase ledger, then the place of supply set in party master is not considered and nature set in accounting ledger is used to apply local or interstate GST. Set your tax details based on this information and you will not face any problem of GST.
Thank you for watching this video. For further information on related topic, connect with Digisoft services. Support number 965 087 1116965 053 1116.